Hi, everybody, and welcome to Organizing Life's Daily Demands. I'm Peter Gordon. I'm the president of New York Financial Organizers. We help people pay their bills and process insurance claims and do all the non-investment side of finance that's involved in life's daily demands. And the purpose of this podcast is to invite other people who help others and to deal with life's daily demands. And today I have Katie Hustead of Paper Moon Moves as our guest. Hi, Katie. How are you doing today?
Hi, Peter. I'm doing well, thanks. Thanks for having me.
That's great. Thanks for agreeing to come along. And Katie, you and I know each other for a long time. We have one mutual client, and we travel in similar circles. Tell us about your business.
Sure. Well, my husband and I own the company. It's called Paper Moon Moves, as Peter mentioned. And we help people get organized, downsize, and move. And we also help clear out estates after someone's passed away. So the easy way to think of sort of what we do is just to think about stuff. We deal with stuff all day long. And by stuff, I mean actual physical stuff like furniture, books, clothes, dishes, things in the closet, just the stuff in your house. We help you figure out what you need and we help you deal with the rest of it.
How did you get involved in this?
Well, I have a background in finance. I worked for about 20 years in financial services, and I have an MBA from in business school in finance. And I, you know, I did that. I was sort of successful. I never enjoyed it, and I never found it satisfying in the slightest. I worked for very large companies, and all I did all day long was help them make more money. Which was pretty meaningless to me. But I volunteered with the elderly. I used to run a read aloud. It was a program at a nursing home that unfortunately was closed and turned into condos in Lower East Side. Very sad, typical New York story, right?
Yeah, typical.
But I used to have volunteers come once a week, and we'd each bring something to read, and we'd sit around in a circle with the seniors, and we would just read aloud. And it was the most meaningful part of my existence. I would leave my job. I would be so happy to get there. So finally, I was like, I always kind of had this entrepreneurial spirit and thought, well, someday I don't want to report to anybody again. And so I finally had the resources sort of saved up, and I said, well, this is the time. And I want to help the elderly. I want to work with the elderly. So I literally just looked at what was available, what was out there. And, this is actually an industry that exists. It's called there's an association called the National Association of Senior and Specialty Senior Move Managers, NASM for short. And there are about 1,000 members in the country. And but when I started, there was nobody in New York City, not one NASM member.
Really?
Yeah. So that was 13 years ago. There were other move managers, but not part of NASM. And now there's probably about a dozen. But so I called them up, 13 years ago, and I said, I'm thinking of doing this. What do you think? And they said, do it. New York City's wide open,
Right.
Millions of seniors, so I just jumped into it, and I've never regretted it. So
that's great. And I didn't realize your background, but we have similar backgrounds. This is my third career. My first career was on Wall Street, and I have an MBA in finance, and I also wasn't comfortable doing it. I ended up going into graphic design before jumping into the senior service industries. And so that's really interesting. We need to talk about that offline.
Yeah.
That's great. So what are the most common reasons people call Paper Moon Moves? Why would they reach out to you?
Well, I'll tell you, most of the people who call are in some sort of state of feeling overwhelmed. They're a lot of people call us with a kind of what I'll call an emergency, where they weren't planning to have to move, but suddenly there's a reason they have to. Like often it's unfortunately physical, right? It's like we have people who are living in walk-up apartments or living in houses who fall, and they're not going to be able to continue living where they are unless they make some serious changes. We get a lot of calls from people after a spouse has passed away, and the family realizes that the spouse was the one sort of taking care of everything. We have a lot of people who are in some stage of dementia, whether they're diagnosed and getting care or whether they're in very early stages and they haven't even admitted it to themselves or to anybody else. It's usually very sad, unfortunately. And it's usually an emergency. And it's usually, I can't live the way I live anymore. I have to make a change. And then they look around at their stuff and it's like, how could I possibly make a change? I have all this furniture. I have all these clothes. I have all this closets full of stuff. I can't move forward. It's almost like you're paralyzed, And if they can find a move manager, our whole profession is about helping them just sort of tackle their stuff one item at a time and just figure out what this stuff, of all the stuff you have in your home, what do you love? What do you need? And everything else, let's just find a new place for it. Let's get it out of your life, So that's, yeah, I mean, it's sad. I'm sure you have the same thing. I'm sure a lot of people call you. They don't call you because they want to. They call you because they have to, right?
Yeah. No, also we stay with people for a long time, and it's the inevitable happens, and it's hard. It's definitely hard. It's sad, but at the same time, like yourself, we're providing a great service, so there's a lot of gratitude.
That's true. Yeah. And it definitely, unlike financial services, it definitely leaves you feeling like you've done some good, right?
It's a little different. I mean, financial services, we all generally, in whatever profession you're in, you're providing some good. But what we do, you and I and other people who work with seniors, it's very tangible.
It's true. Yeah.
How do people find you?
It's mostly word of mouth. We've been doing this for 13 years, and we've met a lot of people like you and other people who work primarily with the elderly. We get a lot of calls from lawyers. We get a lot of calls from the residences, both the local residences in New York City, but also we get calls from residences outside of the city and from other move managers. So we'll get a lot of calls from people, say, in California. We've got a client right now who just moved to San Francisco because that's where her daughter lives. So she was here, the mother was here, and the residents in San Francisco called us and said, help, we've got to get this woman, we've got to help her get rid of her stuff and move. So that's a lot of our referrals.
They move the individual first and leave the stuff behind?
No, they'll be in a state of conversation with the person and say, oh,
got it.
Say the person, like the client is like, oh, I'm ready to move. I want to move into this place in, Texas or whatever. But first I have to get myself in order here in New York. And so we'll get the call to say, okay, help them here so that they can get there.
Right. So they're moving to Texas, the institution or the facility they're moving to will find somebody, and that move manager then reaches out to you.
Exactly. Yeah.
Interesting. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
So what do you find are the most challenging things your clients face as they plan to move or downsize?
Well, it's mostly what we hear a lot is I don't know how to start, like I can't, it's almost like this feeling, you look around and it's impossible to say, where do I begin this process? A lot of our clients haven't moved in 40, 50, 60 years.
Right, literally.
We just moved a woman who was born in the house she lived in Williamsburg. Okay. It was a 4-story house right in the heart of Williamsburg. Her parents bought it before she was born. They raised her there. They passed away. She stayed. She's 82, okay, and suddenly was, had a fall and couldn't deal with the house anymore, and was overwhelmed with the trying to keep it, even things like keeping the sidewalk shoveled during the
Oh,
winter,
yeah.
you
Oh,
know.
no, huge responsibility.
Right. So she called us up, and not only had she'd never moved in her life, you know, and so like, so she didn't know the first thing about it. And so like it's like, where do I start? I mean, I have this conversation 3 or 4 times a day with someone. How do I start? Like, what do I start with? And the other thing that's always on people's minds is I have a lot of valuable stuff and I want to sell it, and
Right, right.
that's one of our challenges is,
Definitely.
yeah, is helping people understand
It's
sort
not
of,
that valuable.
yeah, it's most things. I mean, we
Well,
work with,
it has, an intrinsic, personal value.
yeah. I mean, most people like we do work with auction houses and dealers. And if you have fine art and you have silver and you have jewelry and you have coins or, couture bags, handbags, we can sell all that stuff for you. But the vast majority of our clients, I'm going to say 90%, don't have any of those categories. And
Yeah.
so they may have very nice stuff, very nice furniture. The nice thing is they bought it 60 years ago, and back then furniture was made to last, right? Unlike today where, everything
Right.
falls apart after a year. So they don't understand when we tell them we can't go out and sell your mother's 6-piece dining room set, the dark wood, unfortunately,
Nobody wants it.
nobody wants it. And especially it's all like what the market wants, right? It's just so
Yeah.
like, you've got all these, if you know anybody under 40, like how many of them have China collections, right? Or, or like display cabinets in their living rooms. Very few. It's just,
Yeah.
and so there's no market for that stuff. And
Tastes have
that's
changed.
yeah, it's heartbreaking. I mean, I have to tell people all day long that no one wants their piano, which is just, you know,
Yeah,
hard to get.
that's an interesting one. Yeah, there's no market for pianos. You can't even. You're gonna have to pay to give it away.
Exactly. The only way you can give it away usually is if you pay the mover, right? So
Right.
so say we've had a lot of clients who say, "Oh, my church wants my piano." And it's like, "Great. Okay, let's get the piano to the church." Well, who's going to pay the $500 to have a piano mover come pick it up? And the church doesn't have $500. The church thought it was a gift, right?
Yeah.
So sadly, those transactions often fall apart. It's very sad. Pianos.
Yeah. Well, you could work it out that you give the church a gift of $500 and they pay the piano mover, so you get something out of it. But
Yeah.
it's tough. That we deal with that as well because we have clients who are in similar situations. I have a client now who she thinks she has all this value in her home. Eventually, she's going to have to move. We think we're trying to figure that out, and she's 97 and she won't understand that it's not really valuable.
Yeah.
It's tough.
I know.
Um,
It's heartbreaking.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I'm facing that a lot. Because I've been doing this for 8 years now, and we have clients for many years, and they're getting older fast, and it's sad, but we do provide a lot of good, so, and this is something in the finance industry that they don't deal with. They let other people deal with it. So,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. So what advice would you give someone who's thinking that they need to relocate at some point?
Well, first of all, most people don't think they need to relocate, right? Most people, the vast majority of the people I know, and the clients I meet had no idea this was going to happen. They think, I can't tell you, Peter, how many people I meet who just think they're going to die in their sleep one day, and they'll be perfectly healthy until that moment. And unfortunately, for most people, that's not the case, right? For most of us, we're gonna face a lot of changes, and we're gonna realize that wherever we are doesn't work, right? Um,
And we're living a long time.
yeah. And so what I always say, and this is gonna sound a little morbid, but like what I do personally, and what I try to tell people is to imagine you died today. Like, imagine you get hit by a bus, God forbid, but like, imagine, what would happen with your stuff, right? So, in my case, my sister is our executor of our estate, and I love her to death. She's 4 years older, and she's always taken care of me. She's always had my back. One of my closest friends. So when I think about that, and I look in my kitchen cabinets, I think about Caroline, and I think about like, oh my God, she's gonna be like, she's gonna have to spend hours dealing with all this stuff. She's gonna have to take a week off work and come like go through all this stuff, right? And so I try to imagine my stuff without me and my husband. And I try to say, like, let's keep it under control. Let's keep it managed. Let's not have more than we need, because we just want to make it easier for the people we love, right? I know it's not easy to think that way. I have a very
No.
odd mentality.
Yeah. Yeah, but I find that, paring down and getting rid of stuff is very healthy.
Oh,
Except my
definitely.
wife's philosophy is different than mine, so there's a little difference there.
We meet a
But
lot of we have a lot we work with a lot of couples who have different ideas of how much stuff
yeah,
they need. Like, even me and my husband, I mean, I consider myself something of a minimalist. I'm a little bit of like a freak about it. And he loves books, and I love books too, but I don't like to own them. I like to read them and then hand them off to someone
yeah,
else or get them from the
yeah.
library. So we have this constant discussion about how many books is the right amount of books, and we'll never agree on it. But we'll just constantly challenge one another, and that exists in every household. It's not just you, Peter. It's
No,
every
absolutely, absolutely. Well, Katie, this was really great. I really appreciate you spending the time and talking about this important subject. And how would people get in touch with you?
Well, you could give us a call. Do you want me to just give our phone
You can say your
number, or?
number. We're going to put it on the in the text below the video as well. But say your number.
Okay. So it's 917-374-1525. And our website is very simply papermoonmoves.com. And we're on Instagram, also as Paper Moon Moves. And yeah, just give us a call. We're always happy to talk. That's my favorite part of the job, right? Is just getting all day long. I talk to people, which is so fun, whether they become clients or not, whether they just need advice or they have a question. I'm
Right.
happy to
Right.
talk.
And I say that all the time. I tell people, call me and refer anybody to me, because while I'm the expert in what I do, I know the other experts, so I could refer you to people I know.
Yeah,
And the
that
same
is,
thing for you.
yeah, that's
I
key.
think that's a common denominator for all of us who work in the senior service industries. Is that we like to help.
That's true.
So thanks so much, Katie. I really appreciate you spending the time, and thanks everybody for paying attention and watching the video and listening to the podcast. And I'll see you at the next podcast. Take care.
Thank you, Peter.